Hello everyone, great to see you again. So today I think I want to talk about not about the product, but more around how B2B customer journey actually works from end-to-end perspective. Because in my experience, I've been working on many projects in utilities. Using Oracle, Salesforce solution, for example, um, and they all form a part of the customer journey for different suppliers. And I think it is very important to understand from a business perspective how the customer journey actually works. In that case, you can actually understand how the product would help in each of the implementation. So let's start. Okay, so it's going to be very simple. I put down a very high level customer journey from end to end. So over here, I think what we need to realize is we start with a customer inquiry for uh, a, a quote, for example. Normally, that's a quote starting with the customer inquiry, and so we will capture the interest as a lead in the system. Now, different projects calling it differently, and different products call these things differently as well. I will just use a natural name for each of the process, although in the system you might see different names. And obviously, another thing I want to say is this is based very much on UK perspective. Probably in the West European, France, Germany, they are very similar to this, but it could be differ very differently from say US or Australian. I know it will be definitely different because some of the part doesn't exist in some of the countries. But I'm trying to talk through this, just give you an idea of what happens at each stage. Okay, so once the customer service agent actually capture the lead in the system, they will nurture the leads, which means they will validate the customer details. In B2B, we are talking about a customer as a business entity. So in that case, you probably need to do checks like business validation with company house. You might want to validate their address information, for example, the business insurance, or maybe if they are using a TPI, for example, like a broker, you might need to validate with the broker the customer details. And by that time, we also capture the interest. For example, the customer has, say, 5 sites looking for a fix or flex product to be quoted. And once we're ready, once we know the customer details, it will be converted to an opportunity. And at this stage, the system would capture all the information for the sites the customer want to quote. Now, let's think about a very simple customer, which is, say, a corner shop. Okay, they only have one service point for electricity. Some customer they quote not just for single gas, but single fuel, but also electricity and gas together. And some of the large customer could be a supermarket which has 10 sites, and some of the customer would have um, a quite complex hierarchy. For example, the customer coming for quote is a regional office, and they actually have a head office, and there could be the head office is responsible for making the payments, but supply is going to the regional office customer. Now, all these things need to be captured in the system, and it is a part of the nurturing of the lead to capture customer details. Okay, so once we are ready, we upload the sites. The system will try to validate the sites, not say like address, etc. But the most important thing is to validate what is the properties of these sites. So for example, in electricity, you will have different measurement class for different sites, which indicates what is the volume of the of the consumption, and also you have things like line loss factor for distribution, and all these things will matter in the quotation, because as a part of transmission, the line loss factor, for example, becomes a factor of how much it costs for supplier to provide energy to you. Okay, so the validation normally goes out to a supply inquiry service. In UK, it is called ECOS for electricity and ExoServe for gas. Once the site is validated, obviously during this process, you could be adding new sites during the negotiation, and it could be removing sites if the site is not valid, for example. And after the site is uploaded, we'll start quotation. So quotation is a process where we basically say, okay, based on your last year consumption or last 3 year consumption, I would first of all forecast what is your consumption in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 year, based on the contract you want to sign with, and then we will apply a pricing on top of it based on the life price. So it depends on. Now over here we have a lot of complexity, because let's say a fixed contract, you will actually look at today's price for next 3 years, and then trying to work out what is the cost, apply the margin on top of that, and then it end up with the price, and we calculate the fixed price. Normally it comes down to energy cost and energy charge, and also the standing charge in UK for the fully inclusive ones. But also you could have fixed price, which is fixed on the energy, not fixed on the energy cost, but fixed on the other transmission cost. But energy cost will be based on the actual prices during the contract. Or you could have fully flexible contract where the prices will be based on the life price during the contract. And I think it's based on the appetite of the customer, because some of the very large customers, they do have a energy team, internal energy team, and they actually could work out how to hedge the energy themselves. So they normally would go for a flex contract, but with the smaller customers, for example, if they just have one M-pan, they could very well go to a fixed contract in these cases. From a supply perspective, obviously, the flex contract is more suitable for them because they will find it is more risk-free. Because if the energy price is just going with it's going to be the actual price during contract, then they have very little risk of losing money. They actually will be able to gain some of the make some profits in this case. Okay, and once the quotation is done, the credit vetting is happening. It depends on different supplier, because some of the supplier is doing things very easy on the credits. They might just look at the volume of the contract, and if it's within a threshold, they probably just, if it's not too high, they probably can just do a credit score check, and let it pass. Otherwise, there are very complex process based on the volume, forecast volume. They could be calculating, what is the life exposure, and adding up to their existing exposure for the same customer. And it could be quite complex, but there is normally a credit vetting process before the contract is signed. So once the credit is passed, contract is signed. As contract is signed, the volume will be booked. Okay, so by that time, the contract signing will call into normally a separate system, which is for volume booking, hedging, etc. By this time, the contract with the customer is legally binded, and after that, at the point, so in UK, what happens is the contract might be signed half a year before the actual supply starts, but the registration only happened 28 working days before the supply starts. So a registration process will kick off, which means the new supplier talk to the market, essentially talking to various parties. For example, the incumbent supplier for the customer, and they trigger the loss process for them, and also talk to the agent for the metering service, data service, etc., to book their service for this contract. And once the registration is done, so contract basically starts. Now during contract, there's a put box called contract management, but that involves a lot of things. For example, if we need to let's say inspect the meter, need to fix, if the meter is broken, we need to exchange a meter. There are various kind of change of tenancy, etc. There's various situation could be happening not only just with the customer, but also with the service point as well. And at the same time, we have billing, payments, collection process during this contract. So what happens typically is every fixed period of time, let's say monthly, the account will be billed, payment bill will be sent to customer, payment will be collected either by auto pay like direct debits, or it could just be going through bank transfer. And if the payment is not received by a certain date, as we were discussing during the billing topic, if payment overdue date, bill overdue date is passed and there's no payment to match it, a collection process could be kicking off based on the criteria. So that goes into iterations for every billing period. At the end, either we lose the customer or we might renew the customer, which is starting. Basically, we retain the customer and renew this process. So, and over here, I think there's a box for marketing messaging because, again, I'm not quite sure in other countries, but in UK definitely there is a central service, and if you want to talk to the other player in the market, you need to send market message to the central service, and then it will be sent to various parties like agents and other supply, etc. Okay, so this is very quick going through end-to-end process for B2B customer. Well, the reason I want to go through this is a lot of people in the team doesn't actually know this process well, and doesn't actually know where the product actually is applied at different stage of a customer journey for B2B. So in terms of Oracle, let's say, so traditional Oracle has a couple of products. It has a product called Lodestar, and that has a couple of components. For one of them is the QM, quotation management, and one is called LPS, settlement system, and also actually MDM was coming from Lodestar originally. So for example, QM will be fitting into this quotation and bespoke pricing elements over here, and that is mainly dealing with it's mainly dealing with the pricing part. It does actually cover, I would say, contract a bit, because there is a way you can generate a contract and send to a customer for signature, but the functionality is very limited. Obviously, it covers some box earlier, like upload sites, etc., but it doesn't have a very dynamic way of interacting with market. So normally the site validation doesn't happen in QM as well. Now, besides Lodestar, another product is the one we're looking at, which is this Oracle. Now it's called Oracle Utilities. So C2M, for example, it's a combination between CCNB, MDM, SGG, and potentially some other products, which I haven't been working on very much. But CCNB typically start from registration onwards. So it covers all the all the journey where the customer actually becomes a real customer for the for the supplier. But it also does have some sales functionalities. The sales functionality in the system is quite, I would say it's quite limited, because if you look at the sales marketing part of it, it's talking about campaign, which you can define those questionnaire style forms. Doesn't really help in B2B that much. It probably is something you can be used for the residential, because residential is normally tariff based. So in the project I've been working on, is they have extended CCMB to cover the lead and opportunity part of it, because of the thanks for the framework, as we can create business objects. So a lot of these process can be modeled in the lead and opportunity objects. And also, as we talk about these external messages, so it can actually trigger message to outbound and handle inbound market message to different services. So that has been done quite often in the project. But from the registration onwards, especially billing, payment, collection, it is the base process for CCMB to cover. And over here, I think a lot of the metering side of the process I didn't write down, but I would say metering is probably covered as part of billing and contract management. They are actually supported also by the MDM product. And SGG, obviously, it's more related to the smart meters. So this is how Oracle products sit within this journey. Next one, let's talk about the pricing and the billing. So over here we can see when you're doing the quotation, you're doing the bespoke pricing, and when you're doing the billing, you are you're doing that during the contract, say periodically. The reason I want to single out these two is I want to make you aware that there is a lot of the product or project is emphasizing on what is the difference between these two processes and what is related to these two processes. First of all, when you are doing a quotation, you probably can obtain the customer, say, historical consumption. Sometimes you don't have the customer historical consumption, especially if the meter is not half-hourly meter, you don't have the half-hourly level consumption. You probably just know how much they have spent in the last year. In UK, it's called the EAC, which is estimate annual consumption. It becomes very difficult for the supplier to actually forecast how does it look, because you can break it down the profile class, and based on that you can using the profile curve to say for different profile class, if this customer is I think profile class only have very limited range, maybe 7 or 8 scenarios. So end up with a very generic curve for the customer. That will definitely be different for the actual reads when you receive, because during billing, the the bills are based on consumption, the actual consumptions. So between these two, if the consumption, the forecasted consumption and the actual read is very different, that means your hedging strategy is not working very well. Now, that's why for a lot of the large customers, the supplier is willing to go with the flex contract because it's just less risk. And obviously for smaller ones, they can take the risk, but also they're it's kind of two-way consideration, because smaller customers, they also don't want to go through the hassle of hedging the energy themselves. So these two process I want to single out is the difference between the bespoke pricing, I think they call it point of sale forecast, and also the actual read could make a very big difference. And a lot of the supply actually went out of business because of they cannot forecast it well, and when there is a huge change in the price in the energy market, they actually not able to supply the customer anymore. Okay, and this is related to the last point I want to mention, because in the UK, very recently we have something called MHHS settlement. I think the full name is called the Market-Wide Half-Hourly Settlement, which is not a new initiative, but it is based on now a lot of meters in which traditionally is half hourly is now able to send traditionally was non half hourly, is now able to send half hourly reads, and that can also be estimated more accurately into the half hourly reads. Now that is definitely helping the supplier, because in those cases, the supplier is could be using the half hourly consumption to hedge it more closely to the actual reads, to solve the problem between bespoke forecast and the point of sale forecast and the actual read differences is actually one of the very big topic in many suppliers, especially they are dealing with the large customers, and that exposure is something I would say quite important to handle. So I've been working on some of the projects to using some very complex algorithms in terms of how to do the point of sale forecast in those cases, which is interesting, and sometimes the IT project becomes a mathematical equation project. So these are the end-to-end process I would like to introduce it to you if you are not familiar with how the B2B customer journey works. Okay, that's all of it. Thank you very much, and see you next time.